Good morning, small group leaders. You'll probably be watching this in June, and I've been away for a while, so I can say with confidence, even though it's not technically June when I'm recording this, that I'm sure I miss you, and I'm so excited to hear about how things have been with you in your small groups when I come back in August. But I'm recording these because I want to keep talking with you guys and keep the conversation going about being a small group leader. Small group leader philosophy is what we have chosen to implement at Life Church so that we can connect with kids and help them to build their own authentic faith. I'm going to be doing the videos series that we're going to do here on our YouTube channel from this book called Lead Small. This is from Orange, and it gives a good outline for the different topics that we can discuss that will help you think about and implement different strategies so that you can be the best small group leader that you can be in order to help encourage kids to develop authentic faith that works for them, that lasts. So I'm just going to work right through the book. This is a resource that we'll have available if anyone wants to borrow it and read through yourselves. This is a bigger one. But we have these resources that you can check out we're creating a library, so you can check it out of our little library, and you can read them. We also have small group books. We'll be putting those resources together. Hopefully by the fall, we'll have a clear list of what we have and how to borrow it if you'd like to. But for now, through this video series and hopefully a little bit of discussion here on our YouTube channel, I'm going to work through some of these things. There are 5 basic principles to being a good small group leader, and I'm going to do one per video. So before we actually jump into the first one, which is be present, that's what this video is about, being present, I want to set it up with what the issue is. And the way that Orange talks about it is they say that we have a big challenge with a small solution. The big challenge being that studies have shown for years now that at least about 50% of students will leave their faith or their church behind when they enter college. That's a huge issue. If we really believe that God is for all of us, that relationship with Him matters, and that He is intimately involved in our lives, and if we're sharing that faith with our children, then when they go to college, that faith should be something they can hang on to rather than leave behind. So I think what we all tend to do is when you recognize a large challenge like that, you want to meet that big challenge with some big activity, some big something that you do to make a big giant impact. But the whole heart behind our philosophy is that that's a big challenge, and the only way to lead out of that challenge is to lead out small. Okay? The idea being do for a few what you wish you could do for many. So we're going to talk about this a little. We want our kids to have a really big faith. I'm just going to read one of the quotes right from the book. So we want them to have a really big faith, an authentic faith. And the only way you can cultivate authentic faith is through leading small. And the idea of doing for a few. Most people dream of finding an opportunity to do something big, to make a big change, to lead big. But when we lead small, we simply make a choice to invest strategically in the lives of a few over time so that we can help them build authentic faith. I think all of us have been alive long enough to know we don't like to be lumped into a group and pushed through what do they call those? Ford started it. Assembly line. We don't like to be pushed through an assembly line. We're each unique. We're each individual, and our relationship with God is a community thing, but it is also an individual thing. And giving someone a list of beliefs and things that they're going to read and then sign on the bottom like a contract saying that they're going to observe those things and always believe those things, that's not how you develop an intimate personal faith. Jesus was all about relationships. And from the very creation of humanity, of humankind, we can see that small groups mattered. You have Adam in the garden alone in the story in Genesis, the story of creation in Genesis. You have Adam alone, and it wasn't good for him to be alone. He needed Eve, and together the two of them began to build community, began to build relationship. You see Jesus, when he enters the scene hundreds of years later, thousands of years later, you see him choosing a group of 12 to invest in strategically. There were thousands and millions of people on the planet, like all kinds. He didn't figure out how to create a big stage or get messages to 1 million people. He focused on his 12, that it would pass on to many. And that's what we are doing now here at Life Church and in many churches across the world who are also employing this philosophy to their children's and families' ministries. Do for a few what you wish you could do for many. You want to make an impact? Does it break your heart that kids are leaving the faith when they're older? They're leaving the faith and feeling like God's not for them, like the church doesn't help them, like Jesus rejected them, like they can't be honest in faith, like they can't, when they're faith communities, that they can't think and have decisions and come to conclusions that might be slightly different in their faith communities so that they walk away. Does that bother you? Well, I think the way to lead out of that is to invest in our few, to create safe places for them to ask their questions, to think and talk together about what they're learning so that they can develop a personal faith, an authentic faith, that when it gets tested later on, because it will, because honestly, one of the things that's happening when these kids go to college is their faith is being tested in a new way. You're surrounded by all kinds of new experiences, new people, new environments, new ideas, new thoughts. Your faith will be tested in a different way. That's why if they have questions growing up through these years, we want to create safe places, especially as they're getting into middle school and high school, safe places for them to voice their questions and to have an adult who loves them and who loves Jesus, who loves our church, there to help them process some of those things so that when they get out, they're not shocked as much by what they're experiencing, but they're able to begin to integrate what they have learned in the past and make it a more full belief system, a more full faith as they mature in their circumstances and experiences in life. So that's the heart. That's kind of my way of talking about the heart of what we're doing here with leading small. There are 5 strategies that we're going to be working through together, and we're going to encourage our small group leaders to focus on 5 things that you can do that are really going to improve your connection with your students and your ability to influence them for good and to help them create connections with each other as well. So the 5 are: number 1, be present; number 2, create a safe place; number 3, partner with parents; number 4, make it personal; and 5, when they're older, move them out. So those are the 5. Today we're going to talk about be present, okay? I know I've already taken up 7 minutes of our time to give an intro, but you're not hearing from me any other time, so I guess 7 minutes isn't too bad, at least in this season. So number 1, be present. That's where you want to connect their faith to a community. The idea of being present can be illustrated or experienced in a few different ways. So we're going to talk about how to be present in 3 ways. Okay, we're going to talk about how to show up predictably, how to show up mentally, and how to show up randomly. Okay, because it's your job as a small group leader. It's your job to show up for them. It's your job to care, to love them, to show delight in them, and to create this community for them. So number 1 is show up predictably. Now, for us in our context, you show up predictably by showing up consistently, and for many of you that means weekly, or maybe it means twice a week, or twice a month, or there are maybe a few of you who are once a month as well. But showing up predictably creates an experience where our preschoolers don't have to show up to their classroom and see a stranger, where our elementary kids, they can show up and someone knows what has been happening in their lives for the last week and what their experiences are. Our middle schoolers can show up and say, hey, I went to that dance I told you about, or I had that concert, and somebody knows what they're talking about. It creates a context for their relationship. So showing up consistently for most of us means weekly. I want to put a little caveat in here for our particular circumstances and for our environments. For those of you who are, I'm just going to use elementary as an example. For those of you who are in elementary, so like our 2nd and 3rd grade group, they're split up between 2 people. So I would say if you aren't going to be there 4 times a month, or 5 if it's a 5-Sunday month, then I would seek to build a connection with your partner small group leader. So say Nathan has 2nd and 3rd graders in elementary for the first 2 weeks of June. So he's talking with them. He knows that it's time for school to get out. He knows that some kids might be nervous about going on a field trip, or maybe they're going to be having tests at the end of the school year. So he knows they're nervous, and he sees them for 2 weeks, and he can ask them about how it's going. But then when, say, Jamie Gerlach is going to come in the next 2 weeks, Jamie wasn't with them the previous 2 weeks, so maybe Nathan and Jamie can create a simple text thread or an email thread, or just whatever works for the two of you, but you can consider yourselves a team to care for your particular small group. That way, some of the connection isn't lost when you need to be out for the 2 or 3 weeks that you need to be out. Some of that is just a reality for us. Not everyone is able to serve every week right now, and that's fine. That's just what our reality is. But I think one of the ways to combat some of the connection that can be lost in that gap is by working tightly with your partner for that group. So if you don't know who your partner is, ask Tori, and she can tell you. Ask Tori, and Matt might even know too, just from scheduling, and he can find out if he doesn't know right off the top of his head. But we are trying to create it so when you go into a space and into a group, that is always your group. Now we do elementary, you guys know this best. We do struggle with this in elementary because something will happen and all of our second and third grade leaders aren't available on a certain Sunday. So someone who would normally be in kindergarten bumps up to second and third. So that does happen. It's not perfect, but that doesn't mean that we can't still try and strive our hardest to create those connections and that consistency and predictability. Because quite honestly, everybody needs someone who knows their name, someone who knows what's happening in their life and who's going to show up for them and stay connected. The second thing about being present is to show up mentally, okay? So it's kind of like your bare minimum as a small group leader to show up predictably, but to show up mentally is like the next level. That means when you walk into the room, your phone's put away, you're not worried about what's happening after this class, you're not updating a Twitter feed or a Facebook post or sharing photos online or finishing up texting real quick. It means you show up mentally ready and focused on these kids. It's an entirely different aspect to showing up. You can I know you've all experienced this, I've experienced this. You show up physically to meet with someone, but you know they're not there in their headspace. They're wrapping up, or they're worried about what's coming, or something hard just happened that totally took them off guard, or they were taking care of a responsibility before they met you and it's really not finished yet, so they're still communicating with all those people. Showing up physically is your bare minimum. Showing up mentally is your next. So be prepared, be awake, be ready to be engaged, be ready to focus. You've got that 1 hour with them. Is it an hour? It's, maybe a little more, an hour and a half every week. So show up physically, predictably, consistently, but also show up mentally. Say, hey, I'm ready. I'm bringing my A game, and let's talk. Let's talk. So one of the things that they say in this in the book that I'm using as our outline is they say to take a few minutes and write down some ways that you can show up mentally for your particular area, because it does look different for the different aides. And they give us a few examples. So say you're in preschool and you're a small group leader. Go ahead and 1 week when you're in class, record something specific about each one of your kids and make a note about their latest accomplishments. That way when you show up the next week, you can echo back to that. Sorry, my dog just came through. I'm sorry if you can hear her eating. She's a loud one. I apologize if that's distracting. But if you're a preschool leader, write down some things that they're learning, maybe a new physical achievement they accomplished, and then when you come in next week, ask them how it's going. Hey, have you done another somersault? Or did you learn how to draw a person again? Show me one of those people you can draw. Something like that to just continue that connection. If you have a kid in elementary, record a specific activity that appealed to one of your few and find out if there's something coming up in his week. So if there's something that he really liked, write that down and remember that in the future that Jack really likes, or Jack, let's see, Aiden's in elementary. Say Aiden really, really liked it when we played, I don't know, some sort of relay race. So you can kind of keep that in your mind when you see that coming up in the next lesson. You can connect that and say, hey, you're really going to love what we're doing next week. And if you have a student, practice writing down prayer requests. That will help you continue to pray throughout the week and also give you a way to follow up on specific requests. So that's increasing your mental connection with them when you're thinking and focusing on what the experience is like for them. All right. The last one is to show up randomly. Remember, I said in the beginning, being present has 3 aspects to it. Showing up physically, showing up mentally, and showing up randomly. Once you start showing up predictably, your few will begin to expect it, which is great. But what if on occasion you surprise them, and what if you showed up at a time and a place that they weren't expecting? Okay? And they tell the story in the book about having a meeting where they were trying to figure out how to encourage small group leaders to connect randomly with their kids. And they had a high school student sitting in on the meeting. So they're talking for a while, and then the high school student basically said, maybe I'll just read to you what she said. She tells them a story, and she said, I know how you can do this in a way that will make a big impact. And this is what she said. Back in 5th grade, I was really nervous about a test, and I mentioned it in small group. Then the night before the test, my mom said I had a phone call. It was my small group leader. She had called to tell me she was thinking about and praying for me, and she thought I would do great on the test. So the staff had a huge reaction to her sharing that story. So they were amazed that here was a high school student telling us about a simple phone call a small group leader made many years earlier. Not only did she remember it, she described that little phone call as the best thing her small group leader ever did. So my thought for you on this is just never underestimate the power of showing up randomly. A phone call, a birthday card, a postcard, a ball game, maybe a postcard from your trip. My dog, I'm sorry. A postcard from your trip or a Facebook or an Instagram post. Oh, so sorry. I hope you can't hear that. Anyway, show up randomly. That has such a great impact on someone. I would even say, too, this is a simple principle you can apply to your friendships. You know, maybe you're making friendships with people and you don't see someone as much as you would like. If you just randomly showed up somewhere, I can tell you a couple times my friends have just randomly showed up at church. Either they don't attend church regularly or they regularly attend a different church. And just having them show up meant so much to me. Them stepping into my life, not because they were necessarily ready to be a part of our church per se, but they cared about me and they wanted to know what I was doing and what was happening in my environments. That meant so much to me. So this is a good, useful tip for you in all of your relationship. But they give you, I'll wrap it up with 3 ways that you can implement this idea of showing up randomly. They say in preschool, on the scheduled time, consider sending a postcard with a specific note to the child to show that you are thinking about him. So I told you in the last video that we're working on putting postcards in the rooms. They're probably in there by now, but utilize those. We will send them for you. We will even pay postage for them, but we will send them for you, but utilize that opportunity to make that connection with that kid. Kids love getting mail. Heck, I love getting mail. Snail mail is the best. So elementary, on a scheduled time, consider sending a note with a picture of something fun that happened in your circle, on your phone or through the mail. So maybe you're in group one day and you play like a really cool game or activity and you snap a picture of that. Take it to Costco or CVS or Walgreens, get it developed and send them a card in the mail or leave it for us and we'll send it for you. Just say, hey, loved being with you. That was such a great experience. And for students, regularly schedule time to be on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever media your students use to connect. Leave them a short message to let them know you're thinking of them. Also, plan ahead and show up at their big games, school play, or band concert to let them know that you really care. And one of the things I want to add to that is we learned a little at Orange Conference when we were in Georgia that connecting with kids on social media is really important. And also we want to figure out ways to make sure that the caregivers and the parents of our students are aware that we're doing that. So I would say if texting or posting on Instagram or instant messaging or any of that stuff is a way that you're going to utilize to connect with your students, I would ask you to connect with their families, their parents, at least one caregiver, and just say, hey, I've been thinking about your child. I know they have this baseball game coming up. Is it all right with you if I text with them? Is it all right with you if I send them a message through Instagram and just let them know I'm thinking about them? I really want them to know throughout the week that I care about them and I'm praying for them. But I just wanted you to know and ask for your blessing or permission to share in that way. Would that be okay with you? So my dog is going crazy. She's playing. Thanks for understanding. So anyway, be present. Being present, doing for a few what you wish you could do for many. It's a small action that you can do to help a big problem, to help children individually develop authentic faith. So thank you so much for listening. I want to wrap this up, so we're right at 20 minutes, but be present. Think of ways that you can be present. Being present physically, being present mentally, and being present randomly. So thank you guys so much for what you do. Thank you for your hearts. I'm praying for you, and I'll see you soon.